This is Biernacki, and today I'm talking to you about the #1 vitamin D mistake. This is a very serious matter because realistically, when I look at the statistics versus what's in the news, this is blowing me away. There's a lot of huge misconceptions and a lot of people are not doing the right stuff. Since 2010 and previously, and past 2020, the numbers are still terrible. There's still huge deficiency. There's almost no improvement with how much media attention we're getting. Vitamin D toxicity, the mistakes. Should you take vitamin K2, magnesium, calcium, boron, omega-3 fatty acids? How does it affect your heart, your arteries? Does sunshine actually give you vitamin D? This is crazy. Does sunshine actually raise your vitamin D? This blew my mind when I learned the actual facts in the studies. And I want to save you guys some money because the #1 biggest vitamin D mistake is found at the end, and we're going to prove it. When I did this video a couple years ago, in the news, statistics showed, hey, huge deficiencies, but now, as I'm reading this, all the mainstream articles, the news sources, the clippings, they don't really cite scientific sources, but they're like, hey, deficiency is not that bad. Be aware of toxicity. Don't get toxic levels. This kind of blew my mind because initially, when I did my studies, there's almost no reports of toxicity, and the studies don't seem to show that. And I thought maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe everybody started taking vitamin D and deficiency levels dropped to like the 20%. Because initially when I did this, it was like 70%. But no, for example, overseas on the East in 2021, they did a study looking at all the Asian countries, China, Southeast Asia, India, Pakistan, and the average rates were about 70% deficient, even in those warm weather countries where they should be getting a lot of sunlight. This article found that 68% of people were deficient, ranging from about the low 20s to the low 90s. Another one, what about America? A systemic review was done in 2023. This was a huge review, great study. This looked at 308 studies over 81 countries at 8 million people or so. And they found that people were still very deficient. Another scary fact is after COVID, obesity rates went up, and the people that are most vitamin D deficient are people with higher obesity rates. So if you're out of the ideal body mass index, your vitamin D is statistically lower. I'm going to go over this later, how we measure deficiency, but essentially 30 nanomolars per liter of blood is considered to be vitamin D deficiency. This study found that about 77% of people in North America are deficient on vitamin D. These are real numbers looking at real people with real studies. And they found between 2000 and 2010, the deficiency levels maybe dropped a couple percentage points to now in the 2020 range, between 2010 and 2020. With all the info getting out there, these deficiency levels have not really decreased over time. And they found that countries and states such as Michigan or Canada, where they have winter months, 1.7 times higher the deficiency rate. The darker your skin, the more melanin, the worse you are at absorbing UV light and the worse you are at producing vitamin D. Those rates were in the 80% for deficiency. Females were more deficient than males. Now, the benefits of vitamin D. Vitamin D is probably the #1 vitamin for bone health. It helps absorb calcium from the intestines, leads to strong, healthy bones, and prevents bone loss. So the older you are, the more beneficial vitamin D is. Immune support. This is crazy. Vitamin D is thought to be the single most important hormone for helping your immune system by some people. Adequate vitamin D levels are proven to be associated with decreased risk of infections and improved immune function. One crazy fact that I heard is countries within 200 miles of the equator do not have a flu season. Yeah, they still get things like malaria or vector-borne diseases, carried by mosquitoes, that kind of thing. It's not the viral flu. So your immune system theoretically could be stronger in that case. Because you're closer to the sun, you're getting more vitamin D. Cardiovascular health. Vitamin D levels are associated with less heart attacks, improved blood vessel functions, less inflammation, less blood pressure, Cancer prevention, high vitamin D levels associated with less certain types of cancer. And another important one, mood and health. Vitamin D receptors are found in various areas of the brain, and there's lower depression, better mood. This has been proven across a lot of studies. And autoimmune conditions. This is one I've talked about a lot in the past, but me as a foot and ankle surgeon, I deal with a lot of bone problems, a lot of immune conditions, a lot of inflammation. There's a lot of studies on specifics like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and more. And muscle function. Vitamin D is very important for muscle function, health, function, strength, reducing the risk of falls, reducing the risk of fractures. If you're older, you definitely have to make sure you're not vitamin D deficient. And cognition, so essentially memory and cognitive decline. I just did a great video about the brain shrinking as you get older and why you want to take different types of magnesiums or vitamin D. Check that video out below if you're worried about memory issues. And vitamin D also very important in female reproductive health, very important in skin health, wound healing, inflammation. It is absolutely insane to me that probably the most studied hormone and vitamin is so looked down upon, and the rates are not improving. Deficiency rates are just as high now as they were 10, 20 years ago. Maybe I'm missing something, but the studies show that it's not getting any better. Popular science articles in the news, in the media, are basically downplaying the fact and saying not to take too much potentially. Should we be scared of these things? Should we still have a deficiency? I'm gonna go over all the science, the specific studies, and listen, I have a question to ask you guys. You have to help me. If I'm missing an article, if I'm messing something up, if this video sucks, if it's good, tell me in the comments. Tell me, because this makes a big difference in the impact of this video, and it's my mission to get people healthier as safely as possible. So I care about you guys, but help me out in the comments and the likes. What is vitamin D? Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. You have vitamins A, D, E, and K. And essentially now, fat cutting out diets, potentially we get less of these. I always found it interesting that places that don't get a lot of sunlight, like northern Canada, the Inuits, for example, eat a lot of salmon, and salmon happen to have a lot of omega-3 and vitamin D in the food sources, so which is that salmon and that cold water fish. It's interesting how we evolved and progressed to still get vitamin D. Let's talk about very important supplements to our overall health that are related to vitamin D. Vitamin K2, I have a lot of videos about this, but K2 is different than vitamin K1. This is also known as menaquinone. It is a fat-soluble vitamin that plays a crucial role in many processes, such as calcium and bone health. But it differs from vitamin K1. K1 focuses more on the clotting cascade, so forming blood clots if you get a cut. Vitamin K2 focuses more on other factors. There is no specific dosage recommendation for vitamin K2 given by the government, but there is one for vitamin K1. You don't want to overdo it on vitamin K1 if you're on blood thinners, for example. Our standard recommendations for K1 is 90 micrograms per day, on average 90 to 120 micrograms. But for K2, no official recommendation. But most of the studies I'm going to go over, they recommend up to 120 to 200 micrograms of K2. Now that's micrograms, not milligrams. And what you want to get is either MK4 or MK7. MK7 is the longer acting component of vitamin K2. You can get vitamin K2 through diet, but supplements can help as well. Vitamin K is different than potassium, which is actually an electrolyte that you can get in your drinks. K2, K1, and K3 are all vitamins. So K2 is different than the electrolyte potassium, which you might get in your Gatorade type drink. There's 3 different types of vitamin K. K1 is phyloquinone, vitamin K2 is menaquinone, and then vitamin K3, not really important, but I list it here. I promise we'll give you a simple guide at the end, but you want K2 to come in the MK7 formulation in your supplements. But the beauty is that vitamin D and K2 can come packaged. You don't have to go crazy and buy a million different supplements. We're going to give you a simple, easy plan that I follow myself at the end. Benefits of vitamin K2, bone health. Vitamin K2 is essential for the activation of something called osteocalcin, a protein that binds calcium to bones. This is critical for bone density and preventing osteoporosis. Essentially, vitamin D puts calcium into your bloodstream, and vitamin K2 takes that calcium and puts it into your bone and organizes it in your bone. The World Health Organization, FAO, say that people probably only get 5 to 25% of their daily recommended value of vitamin K2. There's two types, MK4 and MK7. MK7 lasts a lot longer, and it's found in fermented foods, natto, soy, sauerkraut, cheese. It is also made by GI tract fermentation. It's important for your cardiovascular health to prevent arterial calcification. So it takes that calcium out of your arteries and focuses it into that bone where it should be. And there's a lot of great studies how vitamin K2 lowers calcification. Calcification of arteries is a very big problem these days. It is one of the major causes of arterial stiffening. Take a look at this CT angiogram. This is someone with calcified, and that means bone, in your arteries. It stiffens them so they're not flexible. It decreases the blood flow. You get cold toes, poor blood flow. As a foot and ankle specialist, I check the posterior tibial artery pulse, the anterior tibial artery pulse. This sets a good guideline. If those feel great, then you don't have to do much more. And the way you feel it is bounding pulses up and down. And we also check the capillary refill time. That means when you squeeze the toe, does it refill instantly? If it doesn't, if it's more than 3 seconds, we can use a computer to perform a test. We could perform what's called an ankle brachial index. So that's basically comparing your arms to your feet. Are there potential blockages somewhere? And if there are blockages, so for example, if one ankle is much worse flow than the other or compared to your arms, then we might want to do more testing. You can check the toes and then you can order imaging. You can get what's called a CT angiogram. But what I do is I work with a vascular surgery team. So I work with great vascular surgeons. Essentially right away, they can do a test which is an angiogram, where they can release dye. They can essentially check if anything's narrowed or blocked, and then you can correct it. So this is one of the images where you could see, is there cholesterol built up? Is there a plaque? Is there calcification? But one of the things that can really help with this is vitamin K2. You want to get that calcium into your bone. So studies show vitamin K2 is very beneficial with patients with aortic valve calcification, and a couple other studies too, combined with vitamin D. Now, it won't reverse your arteriosclerosis and make you like a baby again, but it can prevent it from getting worse. And especially the earlier you start, the more benefit it can have. What's the side effects of vitamin K2? Here's who has to worry. It's generally considered to be extremely safe because it's found in a lot of our meats, our foods anyway. While vitamin K2 is involved in blood clotting, it's different than vitamin K1. Vitamin K1 is actually involved in the cascade, whereas K2 affects warfarin itself a little bit more. If you're on anticoagulants, you want to check with your doctor as well and make sure your levels are working well. Vitamin K2, rather than working on the clotting cascade, works on osteocalcin and the matrix GLA protein into depositing calcium into your bones. The most common vitamin K2 foods are natto, a Japanese dish which is very rich in K2. It's also found in cheeses like Gouda, Edam, liver, egg yolk, meats, so sausages, for example, chicken, pig. So it's found in a lot of those meat. The more grass-fed that meat, the more K2 you're gonna get. As our society changes and we have less natural, less grass-fed meats, we have less K2. That's where the supplementation can come in. MK4 and MK7, generally MK7 is the much longer acting component, and you want to get about 120 micrograms to 200 micrograms per day. That's the recommendation in most of these studies. Vitamin K2 and vitamin D are both involved in calcium metabolism. So vitamin D puts it into your bloodstream from outside sources, and K2 puts it into your bone and other areas, works on your muscles, works on your heart, works on your arteries. There is evidence that suggests K2 and vitamin D3 are in a synergistic relationship, and that can help with all of the things we've talked about. Vitamin K2, especially MK7, does a few things. It essentially causes gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid residues. And what that does is it activates matrix GLA protein and osteocalcin. These are important in taking calcium and putting it into bone. So essentially, when you're getting proper vitamin K2, your teeth will be stronger, your bones will be stronger. All these things will do a little bit better. You'll have less osteoporosis. At the very least, it reverses the benefits of a deficiency. So that's what the studies show. And when I say high levels, people are taking between 90 micrograms per day and 360 micrograms per day. So for dental health, there's no human studies, but there is some animal models. What we do for dental health is infer basically cellular level and bench study. So we know that vitamin K2 upregulates osteocalcin, which is important for bone health and dental health is reliant on osteocalcin as well. So potentially, there's no real world human studies like double-blind studies, but we can infer that if you're taking more vitamin K2, potentially that could increase the osteocalcin and give you better tooth health. But that's not proven. We do need those important human studies. There was also a great researcher called Dr. Weston Price who essentially claimed patients who took a decent amount of vitamin K2 and were not deficient never had cavities. So he said that happened in his career. The second most important component of vitamin D is magnesium. Vitamin D and magnesium are two essential nutrients that are interrelated in several different ways, and they're critical. We used to get it in our water supplies. Now our water's filtered, so it's not really coming in there. Our food is now processed. We're getting more processed food, less magnesium in it. Deficiency rates are said to be between 60 and 90%. So not only are we vitamin D deficient, but we're now magnesium deficient. And you need both of these for it to work. Magnesium works on calcium and vitamin D in these ways. Number one, magnesium is important to calcium homeostasis in the parathyroid gland. So the parathyroid gland releases hormones that essentially tell your calcium to go low or high. That's the parathyroid hormone. And magnesium deficiency can disrupt this balance and affect bone health potentially. Magnesium is also involved in the activation of vitamin D in the body. Specifically, magnesium-dependent enzymes are necessary to convert vitamin D from its inactive form to its active form and is required for various physiological processes. Magnesium is needed for over 600 enzymes in the body. Many of them have to do with vitamin D. Inadequate magnesium can potentially impair the conversion process, lowering your vitamin D even more. And here's where they work cooperatively. Vitamin D and magnesium are both essential for bone health. It helps with bone mineralization. A balance between these nutrients is essential for optimum bone density and preventing osteoporosis. Muscle function and health. Both vitamin D and magnesium are essential for proper muscle function. Inadequate levels of either can lead to muscle weakness. Cardiovascular health. Magnesium and vitamin D, both important in cardiovascular health. High blood pressure, improving blood vessel function, heart rhythm, blood pressure, and I kind of mentioned vitamin K2 is important to lower the calcification in your arteries. Immune function, so vitamin D, very important in your immune function. Magnesium as well, very important. Mood and health, both vitamin D and magnesium help with mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. I have comments all the time in my videos, the magnesium videos specifically, how much better people sleep and how much mood there is by correcting some of these deficiencies. Here's the dosage. For a man per day, you want to get about 420 milligrams per day. For a woman, you want to get about 300 milligrams per day. That being said, that's just an average. If you're a really tall woman or a really short man, that could differ. I'm not going to get into kids dosing because under 18, I don't deal with kids. These are common options that are meant to be laxatives. So magnesium oxide is very common. It's meant to loosen your stool, not to give you magnesium. Same with hydroxide, that's milk of magnesia, just to loosen the stool. Magnesium carbonate, so these are antacids. You don't actually absorb these. And magnesium sulfate, same thing. It's a laxative. You're not meant to absorb these. So don't take these. They're not beneficial in terms of acquiring magnesium. Now let's talk the good magnesium. So obviously we're focusing on magnesium 3 and 8, but I'm going to compare it to all the other ones. We talked about the bad ones like magnesium oxide you don't want to take. Magnesium citrate's great. It's good absorption, good for headaches, doesn't really penetrate to the brain as well, and can cause some loosening of the stool, which could be good or bad. The powder, I always think is a little bit cheaper. It's a little bit easier, you can put it in your water, control it, so it's pretty effective there. Magnesium glycinate, same kind of thing, doesn't cause the bowel and GI issues. In my sleep video, I go over glycinate. That makes you a little bit sleepy as well. So magnesium and glycinate could be pretty effective, but again, it doesn't get through the brain. So magnesium threonate, this is the nice one. There's a lot of different brains. It's good for crossing into the brain barrier. It's a little bit more money, but realistically, the effects might be worth it. Tell me what you think. Magnesium orotate, good for athletes, more energy, also one of the newer, more expensive ones. And magnesium taurate, good for diabetics, blood sugar, mood. But the reality is, in this video, we're kind of putting our weight behind the magnesium threonate. That's where the studies are coming out now. And magnesium malate, also some good effects like anti-inflammatory actions. What type of magnesium do you want? I go over a video, all my favorite types of magnesium, but I like magnesium threonate for brain function. It's a little bit more expensive, but studies are really good. Magnesium chloride, magnesium citrate, and magnesium glycinate, especially if you want to get to sleep well. Glycinate works really well. Check out my magnesium videos. I go over all the studies, all the details below. The third one is omega-3 fatty acids. We're kind of getting carried away here, but this is very important and the science proves it. There is a synergistic relationship between omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D. Their combined effects work on numerous pathways together. Number one, bone health. Omega-3 fatty acids, primarily DHA, have been linked to improved bone density and bone health. This is also important with vitamin D for calcium absorption and mineralization. When taken together, studies show they work synergistically to improve better bone healing by calcium absorption and depositing that in the bone. You add vitamin K2, works even better. Inflammation and immune function. Omega-3 fatty acids such as EPA and DHA have well-known anti-inflammatory properties. I go into the nitty-gritty with some of my omega-3 fatty acid videos about balancing omega-6s and omega-3s. I'm going to skip that here. Omega-3s and vitamin Ds help the immune system, especially as you get into the winter time where you're deficient. Both of these may help with the immune response and inflammation. And hey, these are all natural things that should be in our body and in our food anyway. This is not some type of synthetic product that you're putting into your body. Cardiovascular health. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, have been associated with better blood pressure, less risk of heart disease, same with vitamin D. And mood and mental health. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, DHA, and vitamin D have been linked to these benefits together. Be careful with your omega-3 fatty acids though. Some of the supplements out there have a low percentage of the actual omega-3s. So you're eating a lot of fat in these pills, but say only 10% of it is actually omega-3s. You want to make sure your omega-3s are at least 50% of the pill. I link my favorite omega-3 supplements down below, but you want to get about 1.1 grams per day for women or 1.6 grams per day for men. EPA, DHA are the way to go. ALA is plant sources. Get at least 50% fish oil. That's the big trick. The side effects are burpee and fish smells. You want to get ones that are cost effective and make sure they're mostly omega-3 fats. Some of the bad quality ones, they're like 90% bad fat and only like 10% fish oil in the capsule. And zinc and boron. So these are trace elements, but zinc levels have been shown to convert vitamin D to the active form, so it's needed. A deficiency can impair your vitamin D. Zinc is a cofactor in 300 enzymes. You want to get about 15 to 30 milligrams daily. It's in tablets, capsules. There's not a lot of known side effects unless you really go crazy, but just get a multivitamin. You're going to easily get your 15 to 30 milligrams per day. Especially for men, it's important for testosterone production. And boron, while it's not a direct interaction, it can contribute to your overall mineral metabolism and bone health. You just want to get a multivitamin. You don't have to go crazy with these extra ones. What's something practical? Well, realistically, rather than taking a million different pills, you can get your vitamin D3 and K2 together. I link some of my favorites below. Magnesium, you can supplement that with powders, some pills, and omega-3s, you have to take those separately. I link some of my favorites below. These are the main ones. Realistically, outside vitamin D, K2, magnesium, and omega-3s, and maybe creatine, which I link below on my videos on that too. Really all you need is a multivitamin. You don't have to go crazy and get 800 different things. These things are just proven to be so important, even though it does cost a little bit. Relatively, the cost is almost nothing by comparison to getting sick for a week, 2 weeks, missing work, and it happens to all of us in Michigan here. We all get sick, we all get the flu. What about vitamin D toxicity? This is known as hypervitaminosis D, or vitamin D toxicity. When I look at the studies, this is exceptionally rare, but it is a very serious condition that occurs where there are excessively high levels of vitamin D. Even when people take millions of units per day, and there is one study where somebody took millions of units every single day in a supplement, let's take a look at all the studies and see if we can find this epidemic of toxicity that I read about in the newspaper all the time. So toxicity doesn't really come from the sun or the diet. Now, I'm gonna say this, if you spend all day out in the sun, realistically in half an hour to an hour of sunlight, if you're in a pair of shorts, for example, you're making 1,000 or more units per hour, probably much more. And if you're out there like half the day, a full day, if you work outside, how much vitamin D is your body making? It is making probably 10,000 plus or more per day. Your body is built to handle that. It's hard to really correlate that in the studies. Wouldn't it make sense that if we spend all day outside, especially near the equator, that our body could handle the vitamin D? Realistically, does taking 1,000 units in pill form create a toxicity in something that's already in our body and could be made in high amounts? Something to think about. It's hard to address this with a study, but studies kind of bring up the same question. Our bodies are meant to deal with this type of overload of vitamin D. The main consequence of vitamin D toxicity is buildup of calcium in the blood, and it can cause things like vomiting, nausea, possibly kidney stones. The active human form of vitamin D is vitamin D3. That's kind of the recommended one. Vitamin D2 is more of the plant form. Studies show now that vitamin D3 is the way to go. Now let's talk about blood levels. There are ways to measure blood levels, and essentially 30 nanograms per milliliter is what you want. You can go a little bit higher. So over 100 nanograms per milliliter, you can test for that. But you can see here, I got the K2 plus D3 bottle. Some studies actually show that taking vitamin K2 takes some of that calcium out of your arteries and puts them into your bones so it can handle some higher levels. But the only real way to know for sure is to get your blood level test done. So Hathcock in 2007 conducted a study, and they found that intakes of 10,000 to 15,000 units per day of vitamin D3 did not cause any toxicity in a healthy adult in any of the numbers that they looked at. However, just to be safe legally, they recommended about 4,000 to 5,000 units per day. If you're taking more than 10,000, there was really no issues. In 1999, a study by Veith reviewed available evidence and said doses of 10,000 per day for several months were unlikely to cause any toxicity in any of the studies they could found. The author actually concluded at the end that you could safely take 10,000 units per day without any significant risk. In 2008, Jones examined vitamin D toxicity and found that any of the toxic cases usually only happen with extreme doses well over 40,000 per day. There was a case study in 2001 by Kotkia that basically had a 42-year-old man, but he was taking almost 200,000 units every day for over 2 months. He developed some toxicity, but when he stopped, he went back to normal. Sanders in 2010 found that supplements containing 500,000 international units in the form of injection didn't necessarily improve bone fracture risk because those were very high doses. It's almost like it messed up your body's hormones. So this caused fluctuations in blood calcium. So you don't want to take 500,000 units. No one's saying to go crazy with that. In 2018, another study was done by Polish researchers. It's hard to pronounce the name even though I'm Polish, but doses exceeding 10,000 units per day for an extended time period did not really lead to any toxicity. People vary, genetics differ. We all have different health conditions. It's not guaranteed for anybody, even though this is what the studies showed. Essentially, once you stop doing it, everything reverses back to normal. What's better, vitamin D2 or vitamin D3? Studies show now that vitamin D3 is probably the better option, and that's the one you want to stick with. This is such an exciting topic, calcium. I have a whole video about calcium, what the big dangers, what the big mistakes are of taking too much calcium. There's really bad forms of calcium and there's really good ones. But essentially, studies now show taking too much calcium, more than like 1 gram or 1.5 grams, it builds up in your arteries, in your heart potentially. So you don't want to go crazy with just calcium supplements and being vitamin D deficient. That's a huge secret. Vitamin D is really what regulates use of your calcium. So drinking a glass of milk, eating some cheese, or eating vitamins, or potentially even just eating vegetables if you're a vegan or vegetarian probably can get you enough calcium if your vitamin D is adequate. So most people don't need to take a calcium supplement. Really, even women post-menopause, the people who really need it because osteoporosis is higher, maybe if you're malnourished, maybe if you're a vegan, but otherwise make sure you're getting enough vitamin D3 because really vitamin D takes up the calcium from your gut and K2 helps put it into your bone. So between those two, you're going to get a lot more effect than just taking calcium. So if it were me, focus more on the vitamin K2, the vitamin D3, and even the magnesium. I got to get the magnesium to pop up here. What an exciting topic. If you have any osteoporosis or bone problems, check out all my osteoporosis guides below and new supplements. Vitamin D and sunlight. This is a tricky one right here, but I'm going to go over the specific numbers and I looked through a lot of data on this. This depends on your skin type, the time of day, your geographic location. So essentially, if you have more melanin, the darker your skin, the less UVB you're going to absorb and the less vitamin D you're going to produce. If we spend 10 to 30 minutes in the sun with your face, arms exposed, it will provide you with more than enough vitamin D that you need. People worry about skin cancer. Now, I won't get into that. There's a guy that I like, Dr. Barry. He goes over this in detail in his book. He actually get a little bit of heat for this. He correlated the skin rates and essentially areas further away from the equator where you get less sun had more skin cancer rate, whereas people who got more sun near the equator actually had much less skin cancer rates. Now, there's a lot of factors there. According to Dr. Barry, the skin cancer rates, according to the sun, might be overblown for financial benefit. But essentially, during optimum conditions, it's said that if you're getting sunlight with your face, arms, or upper body exposed, you're getting at least 1,000 units made per hour. If you're outside pretty much all day, you could easily make 8 to 10,000 or more. But if you're just in shorts or underwear sun tanning, you're probably getting a whole lot more than that. So something to consider, your body is meant to take care of this. A massive secret is that our bodies do not get enough UVB in the winter to make vitamin D in northern climates. So Dr. Young, in a couple studies, said that vitamin D cannot be made in cold climates. There's just not the proper angle of the sun. They've done studies where essentially in northern climates like Boston, people could take off their shirt for half an hour and they make almost no vitamin D. The vitamin D dosage. The Institute of Medicine, now the National Academy of Medicine, essentially want to prevent toxicity. So they set the maximum daily intake, which seems kind of low according to the studies. There are a ton of great vitamin D books, and a lot of the times, rather than studies, these doctors prescribe it to their patients. So these are secondhand accounts, but Dr. Judson Somerville says that he's given his patients, like thousands of them, 10,000 units per day without any problems. Dr. Stephen Gundry, you probably see his ads all over the place, but he says the same thing, although he's getting some heat lately. And probably the best and most famous researcher is Dr. Michael Holick. He is the authority on vitamin D. His books basically recommend there's not as much risk as we think, and the benefits of vitamin D are huge. He strongly recommends taking larger than recommended amounts previously. So I promised you the big number one mistake. The big number one mistake is we are still deficient. Even though it's popular now to say, oh, don't supplement, don't take stuff you don't need, our deficiency rates when checking the blood levels are still low. 78% of people in North America are deficient, according to that large meta-analysis looking at 8 million people. We are still short. We're not getting enough vitamin D, we're not getting enough vitamin K2, we're not getting enough magnesium, and we're not getting enough omega-3. Those are the 4 things that our body is designed for: great immune health, bone health, heart health, mood, depression. Unless you live outside near the equator and go outside every day for 60 plus minutes, there's a good chance that your levels are not where they need to be. I read this great book by Dr. Holick. He is probably the foremost vitamin D researcher in the world. He's included in all the toxicity malpractice cases, all the research. He recommends we all take between 2,000 to 10,000 units per day, and also magnesium, vitamin K2, omega-3 fatty acids. The official recommendations are about 600 to 800 international units. I personally take between 5 to 10,000 per day, especially in the winter. I try and get outside as much as possible, get as much sun. So the numbers are absolutely shocking to me. It almost seems like there's a concerted effort to downplay the deficiencies, but what's the downside? This is safe. The toxicity levels aren't really true unless you're really going crazy. The benefits are unbelievable. And look at the prices of vitamin D. Yeah, they're not free, but they're unbelievably cheap. It is crazy to me that the deficiency is still so high. So I'm gonna keep making videos on vitamin D. Hit me up if I missed anything. Tell me if I got anything wrong. I love hearing your opinions. Tell me if that worked.